Hey guys, and welcome back to the Unfiltered Gamer Kickstarter board game review. Today's game up on the tabletop is called The Grimm Forest by Tim Eisner, produced by Druid City Games. The Grimm Forest is for 2 to 4 players, takes about a half an hour to an hour to play, and its ages, I would say about 9 and up would probably be able to play this game. In the game, The Grimm Forest, you're basically playing as one of the nephews or nieces of the 3 little pigs from the Grimm's fairy tales. That huff and puff and blow your house down type tales. Well, now it is many years later, and the pigs are a little more senile, and they are no longer able to make houses as well as they once used to, and the greedy prince needs people to build his houses. So he's recruited a bunch of people to start building, or pigs I should say, to start building houses. And as the pigs attempt to build their houses, they're also trying to mess each other over, and also avoid the dangerous traps and other animals that you'll find, like a dragon and a troll and all kinds of things that are going to be messing them up. The first player to build 3 houses, the quickest, is going to be the winner of this game. Well, alright, let's go ahead and take a look at it. So here we have all the contents for the Grimm Forest, and as you can see, there is quite a bit, a lot of miniatures here. The first thing you're going to be getting is character boards or player boards you'll be using to build houses on. Speaking of houses, over here are the different types of houses and the different parts that they have. There is the ground floor, the main house part, as well as the roof. And it's going to be for like hay and bricks and wood for all of them. You're also going to get a first player marker, a single pig for each character, along with a base that is already colored for you. You're going to be getting the different locations you can go to: the market, brickyard, forest, and fields, along with the first builder bonus for each of the 3 main locations. Over here are a bunch of miniatures you'll be getting that have involved the troll. You've got this giant over here, a dragon, some wolves, and the big bad wolf. You can get these guys throughout the game and use them on your opponents. Back here are the cards in the game. There are gather cards that will have you going to certain locations depending on the one you choose. Friend cards that you'll be getting throughout the game that include stuff like the woodcutter, sleeping beauty, the fairy godmother, the golden goose, the Aladdin, and so on and so forth. There's a plethora of the old Grimm's tales and other tales mixed into this game. You're also going to have fable cards, and these are actions that will be taking place throughout the game that you can use just before you go to gather. It's really cool, as long with these gathering phase cards and build phase cards, front and back player reference cards. You're going to be getting some tokens over here that's going to be for the hay, wood, and brick. This is used to build the buildings, and finally a die for the 2-player variant. Now, this is all part of the game, but there's also something interesting too. The game is going to also come with a sleeve that you would put on, over the game, which is pretty cool here. It's a nice little sleeve, looks kind of like a book. Not only that and the Mr. Cuddington artwork, but you're also going to be getting the game trays tables. You can use these to put different things in. Like if you want to store the bricks and the wood and whatnot, you can simply do that. And the entire game has game trays that you can actually take out, which is a pretty neat little aspect. But that is pretty much all that you're going to be getting in the game. Let's go ahead and tell you how to play. Okay, so to begin the game, it's pretty simple. We have this nice little gather phase and build phase reference cards for us. Everybody's going to get a character as well as their character board. They're going to get the gather deck that corresponds to the character they're going to be having. And the gather deck is going to have 4 different types of cards. You got the wood, brick, market, and the straw cards. And what's going to happen is you're going to be placing these guys face down, and much like a game like Jack's Friends, you're going to be going to the location you've placed down all simultaneously with everybody else to try and gather and share resources. So how it works in the gather phase: start of round, choose a gather and a fable card. Fable cards are going to be chosen along with the gather cards, and these things have different actions that will occur throughout the different phases of this gather phase, of different portions of the gather phase. Sometimes at the end, sometimes at the beginning, sometimes at the middle. They will also be used to place different monsters on the field. You're going to reveal the fables in turn order and do what they say. Then you're going to reveal the gather cards all at the same time, go to those locations, and then after that, collect the resources. If you have more than one player in a location, you're going to share the resources as best as you possibly can, leaving the rest. After that, you're simply going to end the phase and we move on to the build phase. In turn order, once again, you're going to be choosing 2 actions, and you can choose the same action if you'd like. You can choose to build a house part, provided you start from the ground up, and it tells you how much it costs: 2, 4, and then 6. You can also draw 1 fable card or gain some straw, wood, or a brick. Any one of those that costs 1 action, as well as a special action once per turn that is not included in the 2 actions, and you get to use that afterwards, which is kind of nice. Not only that, but you have a wall bonus. Whenever you build a wall for any of your locations, you're going to be able to get a friend card. And when you get a friend card at any point in time in the game, you can give it to somebody else and they lose their friend, or keep your own. You also get a first builder bonus if you manage to build the first building of that type before anybody else. Let me go ahead and show you a couple turns of the game and what you think about it. Okay, so here we are back to the game, and as you can see, you got the player board as well as the orange player and the orange cards, and you're going to be using one of these player aids. And to start the game off, depending on how many players you're going to be setting up is going to determine what you're going to add to the game. The market is for a 4-player game. In a 3-player game, you remove the market, and in a 2-player game, you're going to introduce the prince. He's going to roll during the gather phase, and whatever he rolls on, he will also land and go towards, and he'll be taking part of the resources there. So it kind of sucks away some resources. But if we're playing with the entire game, you're just going to be using the market and everything else. Also, you're going to be adding the bricks, wood, and straw, as well as one of each to the market when you start the game off in a 4-player game. So we can just go ahead and do that. It's pretty simple because the big ones all represent what is supposed to go on there to start with. So that's nice and easy. All right, now that we've done that, everybody has their cards. The first thing you're going to be doing is choosing a Fable card. So you're going to look through your hand if you have one, which in the first turn you don't, and then you're also going to choose a Gather card. So which place do you want to go to? Now, obviously, all of the buildings cost the same amount. It's going to be 2, 4, and 6 from the ground up. So this might be the best spot, but it's more likely somebody's going to go there. So do you want to go there or not? So if I was playing with another player and I chose this face down, and they also chose a card face down as well on their board, and then we revealed, we would end up maybe both going to the same location. And like I said before, if me and Blue end up at the same location, we would share this. We would get two each, and one would remain here. However, if we went to different locations, I would get the 5, and he would get the 3. So it just depends on how that ends up. After all of these have been revealed, then you're going to move on to the next portion, which is ending the phase and going to the building phase here. So we're going to go in turn order. So if I start off as a turn order, this is my first turn marker. I'll make sure our characters are back, and whatever resources we've gathered, we're going to bring back to our boards. And then we are going to go ahead and do 2 of the actions, right? And if you flip this over, you can see pretty easily. You can choose to build, and in this case, it'd be pretty easy. I could spend 2 and then 3. Getting rid of that, I'd be able to build one of these guys here and one of these guys here. When I build a wall, I actually get a friend card. So I could take this guy here, and I could then use him. I could play it on myself, or I could play it on an opponent. And whatever he does is a passive ability that will affect a player somewhat negatively and somewhat positively. And if somebody has a really good type of friend, they can go ahead and give this to somebody else. After I've done my 2 actions, the next player will go ahead and do so as well. They could choose to draw a Fable card as an action instead of building like I did. I built both of these guys. Or they could choose to take one of any type of resource and in any order, in as many, they can do 2 of the same action if they would like. After that is done, then you're going to move the first turn marker to the next player, and playing will continue until somebody's built 3 houses. Now you can have 5 houses on your board though, provided you have already finished building one up already of the same type. So if I had a house like this, I would not be able to start with a ground floor of straw here. I would have to continue finishing this one. Once I finish this house here, then I can start a new house like this. But I can always have up to 5 buildings on a house, if you, on a board if you want. But you only need to build 3. Once a player builds 3 houses, they are going to win the game. Now, also to note too, on the next turn of play, when everybody starts again, if you have Fable cards, because you can draw them as an action, so let's say that he actually chose, instead of this guy here, and instead of putting a wall down to get a Fable card, and also build 1, then the same thing would happen occurring, right? You would go ahead and pick one of the building methods and flip it over. Maybe you want to go to the gather wood, but you would also have a Fable card down. Now, the Fable cards will be flipped over first and in turn order. So the first player would do it, and then the second player would do it as well. And it would tell you what it does. Okay, at the end of the gather phase, take half of the resources rounded down from a location that no one gathered from. So after that happens, we flip over the gather cards and go to those locations. So blue went here. Now, what's interesting thing is these guys are not, there's nothing here, right? Well, that's because at the end of every single phase in the building phase, after that's all done, before we start the next main phase, we're going to be adding 1 of each of the big proportions to each space. So this place was not gathered from, so now it's going to have 2 4s. And this place over here is going to also get 1 additional of each. If somebody were to actually choose to go to the market, then they're going to get all of these. However, if maybe 2 people went to the market, then they're going to each share in a draft. 1 and then 1, 1 and then 1, back and forth until they all have an equal amount. If there's any left over, it stays there. But, so now that they've been replenished, maybe he went here, maybe he went here. he would then get these, and he would get these, and the harvest would trigger at the end phase, and he would get to choose one of them rounded down. Maybe he'd pick this one, getting 2 resources and leaving 3 on the board, and the play would continue. It's a pretty simple game in which you're just trying to gather resources to the best of your ability to build the houses. That being said, though, there are certain characters in the game that are going to affect you, and I'll explain these guys as well as some more friends above. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some of these Fable cards, right? Because there's quite a few of them. You got the Giant here. It says at the end of the gather phase, all players at the Giant's location must discard their friend and all Fable cards from their hand and 1 resource of each type. The Giant, actually, when you play the Fable card and it flips up before all the gathers, you'll then choose the location that the Giant goes to, just like all the rest of the figurines here. And any player that was duped into going to that location with those scary guys is going to suffer a penalty, and they are all different in their own unique way. You've also got cards like the Big Bad Wolf, which you'll be moving. Curse of Darkness, when revealed, all opponents must shuffle all of their gather cards and randomly choose a new one, so that can mess up where they want to go. Cutting Corners, end gather phase. If you are alone to a location, place this card on your board, or it becomes a new build site, and each section of a house costs 1 less, which would mean that actually I would have been able to build that location, the wall. I wouldn't have actually been able to build it because I only had 5, and you need to go 2, 4, and then 6, I believe. So yeah, whoops. But if I had this, I could have done that. The Genie card, which I won't talk about. The Powerful Friends and the Gather phase steal one build phase action from all players who share your location. Anybody that is on your location is now going to give you one of their build phase actions. Very, very cool. The Friends, like I said before, are more passive, like the Golden Goose. At the end of the Gather phase, if you're alone at a location, gain a resource of your choice. Discard on your turn to gain 2 resources of your choice from the supply. This is just a good all-around. Aladdin, at the start of a round, say out loud if you're going to gather. If you will gather with other players or alone. At the end of the gather phase, gain 1 of each resource if you were correct. So that's pretty cool, or it can do nothing. Fairy Godmother, a magic wand, special action. Gained 2 Fable cards. Discard Fairy Godmother during your turn to exchange 2 Fable cards from your hand for 2 resources of your choice. These all sound good, but some of them can be a little good and bad. And you can actually give a player a card, one of these Friends cards, and they'll have to discard the one they have, right? So maybe they had a good one and now you've given them one that's more neutral. They're all potentially good in their own unique way. But the game's pretty simple, right? You're going to be doing the gather phase and then the build phase, gather, build. Somebody builds 3 houses and the game is over. But it has this unique twist. It has some beautiful artwork. Anyway, let me go ahead and tell you what I think about it. Okay, so what do I think about the Grimm Forest? Well, first of all, this game is heavily produced, like really well produced. It has tons of cool things in it. It's got all these game trays, and they all have their own place. When you put cards down, you can just push on them and they'll pop up. You don't have to dig for them or anything. Even the miniatures have their own place in the front and in the back. Really, really cool. The sleeve on the for the whole entire box to make it look like a book. Wow, beautiful. The miniatures are well done with great quality. They look really cool. The entire game has an amazing theme. This is all really well themed up, really well looking, extremely good quality miniatures. Everything about the game as far as the looks go, the miniatures go, are just out of this world. It's probably one of the best produced games I've seen in a very, very long time. That being said, the one thing I could say probably is the miniatures almost were not needed, because realistically you're going to be flipping over a card and that miniature is going to go to the base for a second, and then after that's done it's going to go back. And you're probably not going to see it again for a while, and most miniatures are actually not even going to be used throughout the entire game because of how many Fable cards there are. We've actually probably only used half of these, and we've played this game at least a handful of times, 5-6 times. But that's just because you don't need it doesn't mean it isn't cool to have, right? So people that enjoy miniatures are going to really like that aspect of this game. You're also going to look at the artwork and notice that it's made by a wonderful pair of artists, I should say. And it has some great stuff on the boards here. You can just see how it's amazing. Like, I don't need to say any more about that because you can gather how good it is just by looking at it yourself. The way the game plays reminds me of a game called Jack's Friends. It was a game that I actually put up as one of the top best games of last year, in my opinion, from Kickstarter. And it has a similar quality of flipping over cards and going to locations and something happening. In Jack's Friends, it's different because you got one person who's bad and he's looking to land on a spot that you're at, and then everybody else is trying to steal from the giant because the giant has all these locations. In this game, you're just trying to go to places where players aren't to gather as much as you need of the resources that you need for your specific house. You don't want to build too many things that are not going to be useful because you only need 3 houses and they just need to be of any type. It doesn't really matter. Provided you get the most resources, you're going to be doing well. But Fable cards and friend cards can change the scenario and how that is going to occur. And the friends are such a cool idea. This is one of the coolest mechanics I've seen so far this year. The fact that you can give a player a friend because their friend is too good. Or maybe your friend is so good and you got a bad one, you don't want it, you can give it to somebody else, right? Or maybe you've got a bad friend and you want a better friend you can switch it with. So it has that potential for you to be able to change the way the flow of the game works. The friends are interesting too because they affect the game in different ways and they affect you in different ways as well. And you're not always going to keep a lot of the friends you're going to be having because sometimes you're just going to switch one because somebody just wants to. It's sometimes just irrelevant as to whether you're going to keep your friend. Whether you are sure it's good or not, they might not even know it. But then, oh, bam! The Fable cards are cool. All of the different bad things that can happen to you are fun. There are some cards in here that are stronger than others, obviously. And there's also a special card that if you find this in the deck, you're going to have to search for another one somewhere else. You'll know what I mean once you understand, once you see and dig into this thing. It's got Easter eggs, it's got art, it's got the theme. It's wonderful in every way. Like I said, there's very few things. Maybe slightly it's got more. It's even got more than it really needs, which is a positive negative. I don't know. And I think you're probably going to like this game if you enjoy that whole area control aspect. You need to be the only one in the area. Although I can see how somebody might get upset if you feel like they're picking on you when you keep going to the same area together. Or maybe in a 4-player game you got 2 people going after the brick over and over again because that's all they can build and there's nothing else. I mean, there are certain things I can see people getting a little frustrated in, but I don't necessarily blame it on the game per se. The 2-player variant has a prince that is added and he rolls the dice. It's the first time I played the game we used the prince, and he kind of takes resources away from the board, which makes it a little more or a little less resource heavy, which I think is beneficial, and it keeps the game in play a little longer, as well as you have a chance to kind of get screwed over from somebody who's not actually the player you're playing against, which is nice. I like that little aspect of the game. But overall, this is a wonderful game. It's excellent. I've played it multiple times over and over again. If I were to compare it to Jack's Friends, I'd probably like that one a little more just because I like the one versus many aspect. But this one here is just got so many other positives that I definitely think people are probably going to like this one a lot better. Just based on what I've seen and how many people have picked this game up. It's a gangbusters winner. The Grimm Forest, I would definitely check it out if I were you.